I am going to give you a full crash course on Smol agents so you can become a master by the end of this video. I am always trying to figure out which AI models work best with my AI agents, and this framework is perfect for that. So to start off, let's learn about Smol agents. Well, what is Smol agents? Well, it's a small agentic framework, or they say it's a library. It's built by HuggingFace, and the actual agent Python file is only about 1,000 lines of code. They use code agents, which are agents that write actions in code as opposed to agents being used to write code. We'll get into that. They have hub integrations, which you can share and load tools and from HuggingFace Hub. They have support for any LLM. You can use their inference API, which I'll explain what that is. Also, it can support through LiteLLM other providers such as OpenAI or Anthropic. Here's what we're going to do for the first project, which is literally 3 lines of code. You import Smol agents, you define a code agent, and that code agent is going to create code, Python code, to execute to figure out the prompt. Now, with that quick explanation, we're going to go ahead and set up for our first project. All right, well, let's begin with the setup, and there are 2 things that we need to do. The first one is we're going to pip install the library, which is called Smol agents. So it'll be pip install Smol agents. Okay, you're going to hit enter, and you're going to install that. Then when you're done, I also want you to create a .env file because we need a HuggingFace token. Now, what we're going to be doing is free, but it just does require us to have a token. So how do we get that token? Well, we're going to go to huggingface.co. And once you get here, it'll look something similar to this. If you've never been here before, just create an account. It is free, and then you will be at a screen similar to this. And if you're not, that's okay, because what I want you to do is at the top right, after you have signed in, your little account icon, if you click that, then you scroll down to access tokens. We'll click this. This is going to bring us to a different page. And this is what we actually need. Now, I already have one, but what you'll do is you'll click the create new token. Just give it some name. Let's say YouTube, and then let's just say read for now. Then click create token. Now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back to a cursor, and you just paste that in here. And yes, this will be deleted by the time you see this. So that is now all we need, which is going to let me into creating our first project, which is just 3 lines of code. So what are we going to say? We're going to say from Smol agents, import code agent, DuckDuckGo search tool, and the HF API model, which stands for HuggingFace API model. Now, it already has this code for me, so I'm just going to click tab, so it fills it in, and I can just explain this. And now this agent equals code agent, we're just instantiating that code agent. There are 2 things we need here. We need a tools. We're going to give it that DuckDuckGo search tool. And then the model is, we're just giving it the HF API model, which is the HuggingFace API model. And then to run that, we say agent.run, and then you give it the prompt. So in this case, I'm curious how long it takes an elephant to cross the United States from Florida to California. Let's go ahead and run this. Look, if you're serious about building AI agents or automating or making money, saving time with AI, then there's no better time than now, because I'm offering a 7-day free trial to my school community, which is in a link in the description below. And now with the complete, let's go through this. So here is the prompt. Here is the model. Now, this is interesting because nowhere did you see me use an API key. Nowhere did I define the model that I want to use. So what happens is, because this is HuggingFace, they have something called serverless inference APIs. What that means is that you don't have to pay for calling their API to use this model. And they have many others like that that I'm going to show you. If you don't give this model, the HF API model, anything, by default, it's going to use the Qwen 2.5 coder 32 billion parameter instruct model. And what happens is, you can see that it's trying to execute code. Well, that's because we are using a code agent. The code agent came up with this code. This web search function is coming from the DuckDuckGo search tool. So it's going to perform 2 different web searches and then print out the answer from that. And then from that answer from the code, it's then going to give us what it thinks, or how long it would take for an elephant to cross the United States from Florida to California. So the execution logs here, right? This is it looks like it's coming from several different websites. So it performed many queries on the internet. It's going to probably average them together. So if we come down here, these are just all the logs. We got the execution. So the distance is 2,700 miles approximately. Elephant speeds in miles per hour. The speed in miles per hour is about 6. The final answer is 18.75 days, if you were curious. And that was a fair amount to unpack because it has a model that we're using for free, a 32 billion parameter model at that. And this DuckDuckGo search tool we're using the function in here through a coding agent. So it's executing, coming up with Python code, and then executing it to find the answer using the tools. Smol Agents prefers to have the LLM write its action, the tool calls, in code, and it backs that up by saying that there are multiple research papers that says it's about 30% better to do it that way. And I'll link those in the description. But anytime we think about Python execution or executing code in general, we do need to worry about security and safety, and we don't want to harm our local environment, which is in the next project. I'm going to show you how to use E2B, which is a sandbox environment that we can execute code in. Okay, so for the next project, let's go to e2b.dev, just sign up. It's free, and then you'll go to keys, and then you'll add an API key, and then copy that. Then inside of the same folder in my project, I'm going to create a .env file, create the E2B API key variable, and then paste my API key here. Now I created a new file. I'm going to show you how you can use this with Smol Agents. So I have a lot of my imports are the same, except this time I am going to be importing the .env to execute the load.env so we can get that environment variable in here because we'll need it so that the E2B can work. So we instantiate the code agent again. We give it the visit web page tool. The model is still by default. So if you say Hugging Face API model, we're still using the same default one, which is the Qwen 2.5 coder. And then I can say additional authorized imports. So I'm going to tell it it's okay to use the request and markdownify Python libraries for this. And then you just set the use E2B executor to true, meaning that we want to create a sandbox in E2B to execute this Python code. And then we just say agent, the coding agent, .run what was Abraham Lincoln's preferred pet. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so it started and it says the installation of requests, markdownify, and pickles has been completed. So that was successful because we allowed these two, and I think this one is just there by default. So what was Abraham Lincoln's preferred pet? It's going to go through a bunch of different websites. It's going to execute that using the visit page function from the visit web page tool. And it's trying to go through a bunch of different ones, and I get the final answer. It says Abraham Lincoln has had several pets, but it looks like while Fido is often cited as one of his preferred pets, it's important that he know that Lincoln loved all animals. Okay, whatever. I think it's saying Fido was his preferred pet. And I know I've gotten this error about unsupported audio type. I think that's just with the framework. It's relatively new. They're working on it, so just ignore that. But this is how you would use that. Now, if we go back to E2B and then you click on sandboxes, you can see here that this code interpreter V1, it's about 9:45 right now. So I just did this like a minute ago. It's saying that it started at 9:44 and it ends at 9:49, and this is where I executed the code. So it created the sandbox for me in E2B so that I could execute that code. Okay, great job so far. For this next project, I'm going to show you how to create a custom tool. Well, really, it's one of two ways to create a custom tool, but this is the easier way. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's get started creating that custom tool. So the first thing we need to do is have our import. So this time we are also going to be importing from Smol Agents import tool. And what this is going to be is a decorator on a Python function, which is going to turn it into a type of tool that the framework is going to recognize. And this is how it is done. I'm going to create a function called define model download tool with one parameter, and it's got to return a string. And so with this add tool, what it's going to do is it's going to take this and turn it into a tool class that is recognizable by the framework. I'm then going to give it docs so it understands what I want this to do, and essentially is going to return the most downloaded model from Hugging Face. If you aren't familiar with what their hub is, I'm going to get there in just a couple projects, and we'll go through the Hugging Face website. And then I have to give it the arguments, the task to get the download count, right? And then what we need to do now is get the logic for this tool. From the Hugging Face Hub library, this is going to list the models, filter by what type, whether it's going to be text to image, text to audio, It's going to be text generation, whatever that may be. We can put that here, but that'll be through the tool and the prompt. Okay, sort by the downloads, then just get the last one, and then return that model ID. Then we're going to instantiate the code agent, give it this tool, the same model, and then let's go ahead and run this. And I want it to give me the most downloaded model for text generation on HuggingFace. So let's go ahead and run this now. Okay, so this started a new run, and it's still using, again, the same Qwen 2.5 model. We will be changing that soon. So the code that it created that it wants to execute is just going to use the model download tool, give it the text generation as, if we look in here, this is going to be the task now for text generation, which will then end up being the filter inside of the tool. Then it's just going to print, it's just going to print out that model ID. So if we scroll down here, it shouldn't take too long. So the most downloaded model, text generation model on Hugging Face is actually GPT-2, and I believe that. Okay, good job with that section. Now, this next one, we're going to create another tool the other way, but this time we're going to be using a text to image and using multiple tools with one agent. All right, now for this next project, we're going to be actually using the same tool, but that was one way to do it. There's actually a second way that's a little bit more granular, and you can do a little bit more with it. So I'm going to show you how to create a tool that way. And this one is going to be an image generation model that we're going to get from the most downloaded tool, which are going to give us the text image model from the Hugging Face. Again, this is free. There's no API key here. I'm not doing anything. So how this works is we have a class called text image tool, and we're giving it the tool base class, which is going to let the framework understand that this is a tool that it's going to use. Okay, so how this is going to work is there's more here to this, right? This is definitely different. So let me go through this. So this is the description to tell it what the tool is for. This is the name that's going to show up, the image generator, when we go through it and it gets used, so you can identify it. The inputs, these are kind of like the parameters. So I'm going to have a prompt parameter and a model parameter. We're going to get the model from the tool. It just output GPT-2 for text generation. Well, we want to get the most popular text to image, and then once it gets that, put that here as the model to use, right? And then the output type, there are about 7 or 8 different output types. One of them is image, others are like audio, text, and so forth. So this one I want to be an image. And then the current model, this is just by default. If for some reason it can't get that, this is the backup model. Now, like Crew AI, if you created a custom tool, you had to give it the _run function. So every time the AI was going to choose that tool to execute, it had to run that _run. So whatever logic was in there, it was going to execute it. The same way here, they just call it forward. And then we give it a couple of the parameters that will be given, right? So the prompt and the model, I just put those as the parameters for this function. It'll give that to the function. And then this is just a little bit of code, but basically this client.text to image is a piece of code that's from Hugging Face when we go to get this text to image model. And then I go ahead and save that image so that we can view it. And then I just return some string. So now I'm going to say image generator equals text image tool, just instantiate the class. And then I instantiate the code agent again. Here are 2 different tools, the image generator and the model download tool. So we're giving it 2 tools this time. And then again, it's the same model that we've been using, the Qwen 2.5. And this time I want to say, improve this prompt, then generate an image of it. A cat wearing a hazmat suit in a contaminated area. And then get the latest model for text to image from the Hugging Face Hub. So now it knows to get text to image model and then use that once it improves this prompt, and then go ahead and save the image. Let's go and test it out. Okay, so it created the image.png file over here. We'll look at that in just a second, but I just want to run through this. So this was the prompt. This is the code it wants to execute. So it gave an improved prompt. So a high-res photorealistic image of a cat wearing a hazmat suit, blah, blah, blah. Then it's going to use the most model download tool with the text to image and then return that. So it looks like the latest model for text to image. Well, the most downloaded model is Stable Diffusion version 1.5. So that's a little older. I don't know how good this image is going to actually turn out. There are much better models now. And then it's going to execute the code, the image generator, which is the function. And again, here's the prompt and the model. So the latest model, that's the variable up here. So it's going to give the Stable Diffusion 1.5 into that, and then the final answer is the image. So then it says the output is it finally and successfully saved that image with that prompt. So let's go and take a look at it now. As you wow, that cat is actually kind of creepy. What is that? What is going on with that body? That is a hazmat suit. That is a hazmat suit. Anyways, so that worked. The idea was that we were actually able to create a different tool that is going to execute a text to image. And what I had to do for that was there is this inference client that you import from Hugging Face Hub. And that inference client is what really allows you to execute the text to image, or there's any other types of models. And just for reference of a better model, this is the Black Forest Labs Flux 1 model. I mean, this is actually a cat in a hazmat suit. Just to give you like models that were really good at one point in time, probably just not many months ago. I mean, just look how much better they've gotten already. I mean, that is such a better and more accurate image of what I wanted than the previous one, just so that you know. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back for just a minute. I'm going to actually show you and go through what Hugging Face is, go through their website, how to look for different models, how to look for the inference server API, because even with this Smol agents library, you can give a direct copy of code that they give you for some of these models to use locally. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. Okay, let's go ahead and visit Hugging Face so I can kind of show you around the website, and then also how you can choose different models and how I would look for the models to choose. So you just go to huggingface.co. It's a little overwhelming at first, I understand. But at the top here, well, on the right-hand side here, they kind of have the trending models right now. Microsoft 5.4 just came out. So somebody had that here now on Hugging Face. Well, at the top here, if you go to models, then what you're going to be greeted with is a ridiculous amount of models. Almost 1.3 million. I remember the last time I did a video involving Hugging Face, there were only 600,000. I think that might have been earlier this year. So they've doubled the amount of models in here. It's ridiculous. But anyways, on the left-hand side here, they have all the different types of models that you can choose from. So here's image to text, image to image, image to video, text to video. They have text generation somewhere in here. Here's text to speech, text to audio, and so forth, right? So there's so many here. Text generation. Okay, so text space generation. So if I choose that now, it's going to filter. Now it's down to 168,000 text generation models, where 5.4 is still at the top. Here's Llama 70B instruct, 8 billion parameter instruct, and so forth. So we used the Qwen 2.5 coder 32 billion parameter instruct. You know, that's the one that we've been using in our projects because that's what they have by default. So if we click on this, you're gonna get a lot of things about it here. There's other ways to use it, not just through what's called the inference API that I had mentioned. But if you want to, at the right-hand side here, there's this train, deploy, and use this model. Now, not all these options will be available for every model, right? They're not giving every model they possibly can for free, especially the Llama models. That's not free, but this one is. So if I click deploy, you can have all these options here. Well, there's one called Inference API Serverless. Okay, that means it's free. They have a server that's where this is being hosted that we can call with this model to talk to AI. So if you were to come into here, now it has like just straight up Python code. If you could just copy this, you'd have to get a Hugging Face key, which you just go to manage tokens. It's free. You just have to sign up. You get a fair amount of requests. So you copy this, you could paste that in and it would work. Or you could just get the model ID here, and that which is what we have done, which is what they did. And that is the default model in the Hugging Face API model. So if we go back to the code from the second project where this Hugging Face API model, I could say model underscore ID is equal to, I could paste that in here, and then now I could use this model. This is by default, but whatever other one that we choose that has a serverless inference API, we can put that here. Now, there is, like I said, there's a caveat to that. Not everything here is just readily available. If I actually go back and let's say I choose the Llama 3.3 70 billion instruct. an amazing model, right? Now, if I go to deploy, it does have an inference API serverless. If I were to try to use this, I am going to get that I need a pro subscription to use that, which means you have to pay HuggingFace in order to use that model. Okay, and then some of these you need to grant access. So I did get access to this. However, I still need to pay for the pro subscription. So just be careful. I know it's very exciting, but some of these models, I mean, they're so good. Like this just was released December 6th. They're not all free, unfortunately. Okay, for the next project, if you weren't sure about it, HuggingFace loves Gradio. So I'm going to show you how to use that project that we just did with image generation and convert that into a Gradio UI. Okay, and this is a kind of a bonus project that I actually just thought of that I wanted to give to you. And this was having a Gradio UI really quick for this image generation. And so I had the same models, the same tools that we just created. They're the same things, but I have a generate image function that is actually going to be used to generate that image. And then with Gradio, if you're not super familiar with Gradio, it's just a very easy way, and HuggingFace seems to love it and they use it. So I decided to make a quick interface with Gradio for you as well. So you basically instantiate Gradio. So gr is Gradio.interface. This creates that whole UI. The function that I need to execute is the generate image function, which is going to do what we basically just did in the last project, the inputs. You'll see all this in just a minute when I go to run this, but I have a text box where you can enter the image prompt. These are the outputs when that happens, and then just a title, description, and some examples for us to use. Okay, this is, I know if you've never used it before, I know it still might look like a little Greek, but this does make things simpler and you'll see why. So let's go ahead and run this. You just say demo.launch also to run this. So let's go ahead and run this. So it's gonna be Python 05. Go ahead and run this. Okay, so it gave me a local URL to test on. And look, this was a whole UI, I don't know, maybe 20 lines of code to generate the UI part. I know the other was more, but so now I can just enter my image prompt. Let's go ahead and choose one down here about a peaceful garden with butterflies. It has nothing to do with destruction and death. So then you just hit submit, and now it's going to execute everything. If we go back here, as you can see, it's executing that function again, or the agent to run that image generation tool. So eventually it's going to generate this image, and then it's going to pop it out here on the UI. Okay, it finished in the terminal, which means that it should have finished here, and it did. So we get the last agent response and then the actual image. And this is, then you can click this button to download it. I can enlarge it, all this stuff, right? It's really cool. Like using something like Gradio is really simple, as you can see. Now, while it's good and all that we can use these HuggingFace models, sometimes we still want to use other models that could potentially be better. And I'm going to show you how to use that with LiteLLM that is integrated into Smol agents. And this allows us to use any provider such as OpenAI, Anthropic. You can use Gemini, use Bedrock, AWS Bedrock, whatever that may be. I'm going to show you how to do that with a quick example. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how we can use any LLM provider with LiteLLM. How we do this is we say from Smol agents, import code agent LiteLLM. See, cursor is just wants to do this for me already. So I'm going to code up a little bit of this, but I'm going to say model. So the LiteLLM model, if you go to LiteLLM, they have all of the providers, and it gives you how you can import these. So what I'm going to use is OpenAI, which means this time we do need an API key. Or if you want to use Gemini, Anthropic, whatever you want to use, you're going to say model, then LiteLLM model. And then instead, like for OpenAI, I need to prepend the model with OpenAI. If it's Anthropic, I think you need to say Anthropic, but I'll have the website in the description below that I mentioned before in other videos, where they tell you, depending on the provider you want to use, what you have to do here, what you have to put here to prepend before the actual model that you want to use. So OpenAI / GPT-4o. Right, that's what I want to use for OpenAI. And then you can give the temperature. I believe you can give some other things here besides just temperature, right? Like the basic AI model properties. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a chatbot with this. So that means I need to have some loop. So I'm going to say user input equals input to enter a message. If we say exit, then we want to be done. And then what I actually want to do is have an array of messages. So I'm going to instantiate that up here before the while loop, before we actually enter into the chat part of the chatbot. And then I'm going to say messages.append, give it the role. The content is going to be whatever we input. You know, I tell it that I only want a max tokens of 500 from the model. Again, the model is the LiteLLM model. So then the assistant messages is going to be equal to the response.content. I'm going to print the assistant message, but then append the assistant message to the assistant role. And then what's going to happen is basically this is a kind of a typical chatbot. Then is going to keep going until I exit. So let's go ahead and run this. And again, I'll have the link in the description. You can have any other provider that you want in here. You just have to. It has to be specific to the wording of that model. Then of course, in your .env file, whatever you decide to do, go ahead and make your environment variable for that key here. Because a Python 06, hey, my name is Tyler. It's going to say, okay, so the assistant is printing out the assistant message, which was the response from the model here. So response.content, that's going to then print out the assistant message. And then we're just appending that to the messages, so it kind of has like some memory of what we're saying. So then entering message, what is your name? It says probably gonna say it doesn't have a name. How about Steve? I don't know why Steve. It just kind of came to me. Okay, what's your name? You can call me Steve. What can I do for you today, Tyler? Okay, so this is beginning the whole chatbot, right? And this is how you can create a chatbot with with small agents, and you don't have to do much else. You can use any LLM from LiteLLM as if it's one of their providers, and they have so many providers. Now, of all the great things that Hugging Face has, one of them is something called Hugging Face Spaces. This allows us to basically execute applications that somebody is hosting or is deployed in Hugging Face for us to use locally. It's where you can build, share, and host applications in just a few minutes. So I'm going to show you in the next project how to load a simple application that somebody has already made locally. All right, now to get to Hugging Face Spaces, it's just huggingface.co/spaces. And now here are all the AI apps that are made by the community, and they say have spaces of the week, all running apps by trending. You know, you can go here and search for anything that you want. I'm going to search for something specific. And so this was somebody that I've seen when I've been searching and trying to figure out what Smol Agent is. He had created quite a few of these, as you can see already. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of these. I'm just going to use the simple get travel duration tool. So this is a running app that I actually run from here. So if I click this, I could just, start this here, right? I can certainly do that, but I can also look to see what's happening. So at the top right, if I go to files, this is essentially the code that's being used. So if I go to tool.py, which is, I believe, where probably everything, like what's actually going on. So I have this simple tool. It is get travel duration. It uses, here's the forward function that needs to be used to execute this. And it's using something with Google Maps to basically get the travel time between two places. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. I think he's part of Hugging Face staff, if I'm not mistaken. So I would click on this, or I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Click on Get Travel Duration Tool. And then up here at the top left, there's a little copy button. You just copy that. And for the code here, see, I'm just importing the tool. I'm getting my environment variables. I'm saying get travel duration equals then tool dot from space. Now I basically give the name of that. That's what we just copied. The name of the actual tool, or what we want to call a tool, is we're just going to say get travel duration tool. Then the description is just get the travel duration between two locations. So then we want to say get travel duration tool from Paris to London. And that's because these are the two inputs that we need. If we were to look at the tool, we have a start location and a destination location. Now there are other things that you can give it, like a transportation mode, and also like driving, walking, bicycling, or whatever it wants. It says it defaults to driving. I'm going to come back here and run this file. So you see the API, get travel duration tool huggingface.space. The first available API was /get travel duration, and it's saying 5 hours and 47 minutes is the time between Paris and London. I'm curious what the duration is between Tampa and San Francisco. 1 day and 17 hours. Okay, and there are just so many here that you can try and use as well. So go ahead and try some of these out. It's pretty awesome. And then let me know what you tried in the comment section below. Okay, for the last project, this wouldn't be a proper AI agentic course if I didn't show you a multi-agent setup example. So we're going to go through a quick example using 2 different agents, and I'll show you how they manage these agents. All right, so this last project is dealing with multi-agent. So I have the code already, and it's just going to be better to explain kind of how this is going to work. Now, I will say this is not as intuitive, but let me just go through this. Well, the first thing is we have a visit web page tool, which basically just uses requests, then mark downify to get if it can get something from that web page, and then just removes multiple line breaks. So that's nothing crazy. This is just going to visit that URL. So from Smol agents, we import several things here, the different agents, the DuckDuckGo search tool. Now this web agent is a tool calling agent. We're going to give it both the tools, DuckDuckGo search tool and visit web page. It's just the same model. We can give it a maximum number of steps that it's going to perform. Now it's a tool calling agent. It's just a little bit different because it does really well with JSON, and these tools are relatively simple. And since they're going to be dealing with JSON, this is going to handle that type of data better. Okay. And then we have a managed web agent. Now, what this is going to do is we're going to wrap that web agent in a managed agent. Okay. And we're going to give that managed agent to a manager agent. And what you could do here is you could have multiple of these managed agents for that manager agent to take care of. That was a tongue twister, I know. So basically we have a web agent that has these tools. We're going to wrap that in a managed agent. Then we have a manager agent, which is really just a code agent. And a lot of these things are the same. It doesn't have any tools, same model, but we can have a list of managed agents. Here, I'm just giving them one, but you could have multiple here. And like we've had before, the additional authorized imports. So the multi-agent here is the code agent, is a manager agent. And if we had several more agents that it needed to manage, they would all be wrapped in a managed agent class. Okay, so like I mentioned, it's not as intuitive as like for me, it took me just a little bit to get used to that. But then we just say manager agent.run. What do you think will happen in 2025 with AI agents? Compare the usage in production in the past 12 months, then just print the answer. Okay, so it did a lot of searches. I mean, it aired out a couple times, but it performed so many searches here. Like it's, yeah, wow. And when it did the website visits, I mean, it was able to get all of them. So this is a lot of information. I think, is this something from Crew AI also? But yeah, I mean, look, it's talking about LangChain. This probably might be a LangChain like related answer, but you see, it still executed code. The search was part of the tool, so it asked 2023, asked for 2025. So prediction. Oh, because it wanted to get what it was then to based on to compare it to now. So summary of the agents in 2025 and in the past usage in production in the past 12 months. And then I went ahead and put them into a markdown file. It's not true. It's not like true markdown. I would have to get rid of some of the stuff, but it's fine. I'm not going to do all that. But increase the taxonomy, autonomy, wider integration, customer service. Yeah, so all these are really cool. You have this answer whenever you get my GitHub. But really cool stuff, right? So this is a way that we can have multi-agents in this framework. Now, with that said, this is a relatively newer framework. I think it's actually replacing their transformer framework that they had. I forget the name of that, but they're replacing that, and this is going to end up, they're going to deprecate that, and this is going to be their new one. Thank you again so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I know that you had learned how to use the Smol Agents framework by now. And if you have any comments or anything that you want to ask me, please leave them down in the description below. And again, I have a link to my newsletter and my school community in the description as well. In the meantime, here are some other courses that you can learn how to build AI agents with. I'll talk to you later.